Hey everybody, I want to thank you guys for checking out my Kickstarter campaign. For those of you guys who did not see me during the Corp Issue 1 Kickstarter last October, Corp is explained usually as a high-concept slasher comic. And what I mean by that is it pays homage to the slasher comics of the 80s and 90s, but hoping to bring some new life to the genre, and hopefully take the horror, in particular the slasher genre, in some new directions. And I emphasize 80s and 90s for a particular reason, because I think that helps sum up exactly what the tone of this comic is going to be. Because you see, the horror films of the 80s were considered like the golden age of slasher films, where you had your Halloweens, your Friday the 13th, your Nightmare on Elm Street, so on and so forth. If you can think of it, there was a slasher movie. But it got to the point there was so there's so many of them. It almost was claustrophobic in that era, when there was several horror films released every year, all of this very similar genre, similar rules, the similar tropes, and where a lot of that stuff was cemented. There's a formula to how these films were made, and because of that, a billion of them got made. All you had to do was just connect the dots, you know, it's like Mad Libs, and they just could push them out over and over and over and over. But when the 90s hit, people became aware of these tropes, and that's where a lot of these jokes came from. Like, the black guy always dies first, or, you know, never go into the woods, never say I'll be right back, you know, never have sex, never do drugs, never drink. Like, all these things happened in the 90s, and it made it more difficult to enjoy these films because you knew all of these things. So they tried something different. In particular, this came in the form of the late Wes Craven's movie Scream. And what this movie did is exactly what I'm hoping that Corp is going to hit on. This idea of being able to comment, make commentary, and also make fun of the tropes and the, you know, the inside jokes and all that kind of stuff that, you know, the blueprint of these 80s slasher movies, while itself still being, in its core, a slasher movie. And that's what makes the movie so good. What makes Scream both hilarious and horrifying. What makes it a great parody of slasher movies, but also an incredible slasher movie. And I'm hoping that is what Corp is. That Corp is going to be able to make fun of a lot of the tropes, make a lot of the references, and all that kind of stuff from these 80s and 90s slasher movies, while also itself being its own unique thing. So, paying homage specifically to those kind of movies, like Tucker and Dale vs. Evil, or the Scream franchise, as mentioned earlier, or Cabin in the Woods being the primary one, Corp takes a self-aware direction with the horror genre, looking at it completely from the perspective of the horror slasher, in this case. Because Corp is Corpse Corporation. Very similar to the plot of Cabin in the Woods, we start out where the actual slashers and the actual horror aspect of the movie is a staged event that takes place, you know, from a company standpoint as we look in on what's happening from, you know, to the traditional horror survivors, you know, from a different perspective. But while the twist of Cabin in the Woods was with Corp, the idea of it is that the reason that the company exists is because they're actually filming the deaths of all of these stupid teenagers, editing them together, and selling them as the summer's big horror slasher movie to other dumb teenagers. Which is our in-canon reason for why slasher villains, you know, have such a thing for the theatricality, why the blood gushes everywhere, why everything is done in the less practical but the more entertaining way at every single point. That's one of the main conceits I love about this comic, is that we get a chance to actually dissect and come up with legitimate, like, in-story reasons for a lot of these hilarious tropes in horror movies. They're not just glanced over like, haha, you remember this thing? We made a reference to that. No, like, they're the concrete of this comic, is looking at this company and looking at the reasons why all these rules take place. We follow along with our main protagonist, Jack, who is a new employee at the Corp company and wants to bring it back to its old slasher movie roots. The only problem with that is that the company has gone in this more, you know, progressive, you know, Blair Witch kind of paranormal activity kind of different pathway where everything's a lot cleaner, a lot more modern, so on and so forth. So to prove himself, he takes on this mission that nobody else wants, to do the traditional 80s, you know, back to basics slasher movie. But the thing that makes this interesting is just like he's kind of going into this thinking that it's just going to be the traditional slasher movie, and it ends up being something else for a billion different reasons. That's kind of the way the audience, I want them to go into this thing. I think that the main thing that I think people are going to get the most entertainment out of this project is the idea that every horror fan of the book that knows these tropes, that knows these formulas, thinks they're going to know exactly where this comic is going to go at every single moment. And just when they think that they know, based on all their experience, that I'm going to zig, that's when I zag. And that is why this comic is going to have so many great, you know, great twists and turns and all that kind of stuff that's going to make, hopefully, a slasher story like you haven't seen it before. Now, I realize it is unorthodox for me to be pitching this project, considering that, unfortunately, issue 1 of the comic isn't currently completed. But due to some setbacks with the previous project and some changing in the art staff, we were unfortunately unable to finish the comic by this point, and the comic is hopefully going to be released by the end of October of this month. That being said, for a horror comic, you know, the Halloween season was really something we really couldn't afford to miss, so that's why we had to take this kind of unorthodox approach. But rest assured, all throughout the month of October, to help promote this project, different pages and sketches and different pieces of the created issue 1 of the comic are going to be released to the public and to the Kickstarter backers that you're going to be able to look at, take a deeper look at the art style of this comic, and really get a feel of what Corp is going to be. Corp itself is 4 issues long, and this particular Kickstarter is going to be funding the second of the 4 issues, and then stretch goals after that will eventually take on issues 3 and 4. Our new art staff is going to be Sarah Dine, who worked with us on the colors before, but also was really awesome about this project is I get to work with Jason Jimenez, is going to be our new penciler and inker. And the work he's done in this comic so far has been absolutely amazing, and I couldn't be any more happy with it. As his new cover for the project, as you can see behind me, really captures the kind of Friday the 13th meets Scooby-Doo kind of effect we're looking for. The art style is a very, you know, like R-rated Hanna-Barbera kind of thing. Kind of the effect of like Happy Tree Friends. It's an art style where you don't expect to see tons of blood and violence, but that makes it all the more funnier when you see the contradiction there. And that's what I really like about that. Both of them have worked together to create an interesting color palette and look for this project that I've been working on, getting absolutely nailed with multiple artists, and I'm glad they finally found exactly what I want it to look like. And I'm really happy to see what we create with that. There's all sorts of different backing rewards that you can get on the project, including hopefully some commission artists who I've been able to find that are donating their art to the project. And on top of that, one of the main rewards you get towards the end, very similar to the Get Yourself Killed and the comic reward we had in our last campaign, we are creating a custom poster and Corp alternate cover for our Kickstarter backers when the final copies are released, which will include a giant macabre culmination of our high backer rewards, all murdered in various ways in this giant alternate poster. And just figured that would be an awesome way to get everyone involved in the comic. And including that, you know, you can get your copies of issue 1, and also you'll be able to get your free copies of the first 2 issues of my other series, The Man Who Watched Batman. I really hope you guys take a chance to look at our campaign. I really hope that this kind of comic is something that you've been waiting for, something that you really want, and I cannot stress it enough. If you are the kind of person who likes these kind of movies, who likes both the 80s, out-of-control, ridiculous, cheesy slasher movies, but also some of the more self-aware takes of the 90s or the 2000s, I think this project is perfect for you, and I highly suggest that you check it out. Thank you for your patronage. Please share this video as much as you can, spread the word about the project, and I really hope that this comic fulfills your wildest dreams. Or should I say, your nightmares. That was horrible. Goodbye, everybody!